Liking things used to be so simple, and now it feels like every fandom is a political war zone, and I have to ask, how the hell did we get here? Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. I remember back in 2011 or 2012 when I was first introduced to online forums and Facebook groups and Tumblr pages and all sorts of things relating to my favorite thing in the world at the time, Marvel. And yes, there was the occasional angry 14-year-old girl that couldn't comprehend why you didn't like her original character that was stronger than every Avenger on the planet, and she would kick you out of the group and demonize you with all of her friends. But see, it was always like one-off asshole, and now we've kind of gotten into a time where disagreeing fandoms literally feel like warring tribes, which is really weird when we consider that the only thing we're talking about is superheroes and sci-fi nonsense. Fandoms should be, and used to be, a form of escapism. You'd sit there with your friends after school, or you'd log into some kind of forum online, and you'd talk about which Jedi would win in a fight, which superhero was stronger. The answer is always Batman with prep time. And I mean, you might end up in like a spirited debate or discussion with whoever you were talking with, but they weren't like outright battles. You were just having conversation. My earliest fandom debates were so dumb just because I was like 11, but I was talking to like teenagers. And as I got older, it kind of stayed the same way. We had so much fun just discussing things, and you'd have people that you would get along with better or worse, but for the most part, it was kind of like you realized you really fundamentally disagreed with a person and you just walk away. And that wouldn't be somebody you talked to in the group. But then it started shifting from fun discussions to like angry, really hateful arguments, and it really stopped feeling safe to engage in any discussion. I, for the most part, make my videos and walk away. I really don't like to engage in any sort of discourse or discussion on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever, just because people get so insulting and angry about it, and I really don't have the mental bandwidth to argue with people on the internet. I have no interest. But people started getting really angry and borderline worshipping the ideologies, fandom-wise, that they liked. And the internet literally just supercharged that. Social media not only amplified people's voices, it also democratized global discussion. Because realistically, before the internet, if you wanted to argue superheroes with anybody, you better hope that whoever was on your playground at the time, somebody liked superheroes. And if you liked talking about superheroes and that guy thought that Superman was better than Batman, well, for the most part, you might agree to disagree and let bygones be bygones, because if you insult that guy, you're not gonna have anybody else to talk superheroes with. And before social media, for instance, these forums and different websites where people would have these discussions, they were so small scale and tight-knit that you really couldn't be the way that people are on social media. Social media means that you can reach so many people, millions of people. You can spend all day arguing with people all over the world now. And so suddenly you're exposed to so many hot takes, and you are the person with a hot take being exposed to so many other people. And so a hot take stops being just a hot take. It turns into a cultural battle, and gear up, buddy, because you're in. And since platforms reward outrage because of the engagement, then essentially tribal identities that are tied to these fandoms and different topics start forming, and they form fast and they form strong. I honestly can't imagine fandom toxicity to this level existing off of social media. It's just because so many people now have their voices amplified, they feel safe to say whatever they want, and they're willing to be that much more rage-filled and insulting and just shitty to their fellow fans because they know they're never gonna meet them in person and get knocked on their ass. I think one of the worst times in terms of the fan wars that I've ever seen, when The Acolyte was out, there were so many people that just really vehemently defended it, and they were actually trying to get people that didn't like the show and spoke openly about how they didn't like the show, they were trying to get them deplatformed. Imagine being so threatened by somebody else's opinion about a TV show that you try to silence them entirely. I really could not believe the shit that I was seeing, and I was thinking about my time in the Avengers forums and Tumblr pages on 2012, and I honestly couldn't believe that 13 years later, this is where we got to. And of course, we didn't get here in a vacuum. Unfortunately, these fandoms now are intrinsically, inexplicably tied to a political and cultural layer. I don't like politics. I think they're horrendously messy, but Hollywood has started injecting its own politics into every single piece of content it produces. Be it a movie, be it a TV show, be it a short film, whatever it is. Whatever IP it's tied to stops being just an IP independently, and now it's tied to a political machine. Whatever kind of politics Hollywood is in line with, they are now actively injecting that into major IPs, and so it ends up making these debates that should strictly be nonsensical, they start taking on a political edge that is kind of unfair to have to deal with. So then the fans don't just split on an opinion basis, they split along ideological lines. And it's way harder to put those people together and way easier to see those people become polarized, as we've seen in politics today. And so on one side, you have it fan versus fan on either side of this ideological line, but then you have the fans versus the studios, where the studios are actively calling the people that buy their products toxic, and the fans are calling the studios agenda machines. And I used to think that this was avoidable, but the fact of the matter is that the studios actively lean into politics sometimes. They know that they can't really, stick the spoon in the stew in any other way other than injecting their politics into whatever you're watching. And I think these kinds of arguments basically made fandom discussions incredibly unfun, because now it's almost like the political thing is unavoidable. Even if you're like me and you try not to specifically get into the political aspects of these things, it's almost like you're just not saying the quiet part out loud. It's just simmering underneath the surface, but that political aspect is always there. I did not become a content creator, a commentator, whatever you want to call me, to talk about politics. It's not what I do. If I wanted to talk about politics, I would have made a political channel. I just want to talk about, I like this Star Wars, I didn't like the Star Wars, I like the superhero, I didn't like it, without it being intrinsically tied to some greater political ideology. And unfortunately, it more and more starts to feel like it's unavoidable to get into these discussions from that angle. And so besides ideology, the big issue here, and I've kind of touched on this in other videos before, is that fandom literally replaces identity for a lot of people. I think back in the day, most people, what they had was just religion. So you inherently tied yourself to your religion. That was your worship, your God, your house of worship. This is what you believed in. So when your religion was attacked, your God was questioned, then that was your biggest point of contention. How dare you question my belief system? But we now have seen a shift away from religion. It's almost like a second renaissance, except we're just getting dumber. Nobody's making anything really all that cool anymore, and we're letting the computers take our jobs. Now, instead of deriving identity from religion, people derive identity from fandom. It's almost like people traded real life religion for being Jedi, but nobody's managed to use the Force yet. Although I did go up to an automatic door at the grocery store the other day and I did this and it opened, I don't think it's because I triggered the automatic door thing. I think it's just because I used the Force. I'm just saying. Like, I could be opening a door right now. You wouldn't know. Anyway, so when people identify this hard with a fandom, with a piece of media or whatever, they look at any attack or perceived attack on that content as a personal attack. I mean, you look at the age-old debate of DC versus Marvel, Star Wars fans versus other Star Wars fans. We're constantly looking to demonize the other side, because the minute they come for your favorite character, your favorite movie, whatever, a lot of people, when they heard me say, I thought Superman was a shitty movie, they heard me say, I think you're a shitty person. These are not true. They are mutually exclusive. I can think this movie you love sucks, and I can still think you're worthwhile as a human being. But a lot of people don't take it that way. And so then when a lot of people tend to feel so attacked by alternate opinions, then essentially They sink down into this little echo chamber where everybody they know feels one way or another, and they're safe. It honestly all starts to feel like fandom tribalism is right in line with political tribalism. I understand why people get so intense about politics, because these are the things that make or break the way you live. It's what's gonna affect your gas prices, what's gonna affect the ideologies that shape the world around you. When it comes to Star Wars, really? What does that do? Nothing. The Book of Boba Fett sucked. You know what I did? I took down the Boba Fett posters. I moved on. There were people that liked the Book of Boba Fett and they argued with me about it. I still took the posters down. Nobody came and held my nose and made me eat Boba Fett mac and cheese. I don't think that exists, but that would have been really cool. And just like every war, there are winners, there are losers, and there are a lot of casualties. Fandoms these days are too angry to be welcoming, so casual fans want nothing to do with any of this shit. If I was somebody that just sort of liked Star Wars, I would make it a point to avoid anybody that's ever worn a Star Wars t-shirt in their lives, because I would be terrified at what kind of vitriol I might open up if I said something they didn't agree with. And since it's creators versus critics versus fans, then we end up in an endless cycle of blame where none of these people will ever get along with each other, none of them will ever see eye to eye, and none of them actually wants to hear what the other one is saying. And so then the actual art, the story, whether it be good or bad, is totally lost in the noise, because the topic of conversation now is no longer that piece of content, it's just how angry people were about it. I don't think it's possible anymore to navigate a fandom without getting roped into some shit, because you literally cannot give an opinion on anything. You can say it as gently as you like, as forcefully as you like, as firmly, you can say it any way, and somebody's going to be offended enough to want to pick a bitch fit with you. It's gonna happen whether you want it to or not. And I think all these fandom wars really do is just hurt and if not destroy the fandom in the long run, because at the end of the day, fandom means that we get together on a community basis to enjoy these things together. And if all I'm ever gonna do is be bitched at or have to join the other side to fight over these things, I don't want to fight over them, okay? I have plenty of things to fight about in my real life, plenty of aggravation, slow drivers, people putting pickles on my burgers when I ask for no pickles. There are so many things for me to be irritated about that I am simply not going to engage in the discourse online. I just refuse. And it sucks to see fandom go this way, where fandom basically became cultural war zones, because fandoms basically stopped being hobbies and they instead became the basis for people's entire identity. And I realized that at some point we stopped arguing about superheroes and movies and who would win in a fight. And what ended up happening was we started arguing about ourselves. And that's probably why fandom feels way less like fun and more like war. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know the fandom that you think is guiltiest of engaging in the fandom wars in the comments below.